Good evening.
Good evening, Joyce.
It is my great honor and privilege to be able to introduce to you my colleague and friend, Muala Selçuk. She is the professor of religious education on the Faculty of Divinity at Ankara University in Turkey. And she also serves there as the director of Continuing Education Center. And we have known each other, we were just trying to remember, for about 5 years now through the Religious Education Association. Dr. Selçuk currently serves as the president of this organization, which brings together religious educators in the US and internationally, and has done so for 104 years now, I think. And so it's really wonderful. She is the first president from Turkey. She is also the first Muslim president of the Religious Education Association. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us in that organization to have her leadership. I think one reason I connected with Dr. Selçuk early in our conversations is that her dissertation work when she was a graduate student a long time ago was dealing with early childhood, which is also a passion of mine. The title, Religious Patterns in the Education of Preschool and School-Age Children. And so her focus in religious education is much broader than that, but that was a beginning point that continues to be a base, a foundation. These days, we see her working around the themes of interfaith and interreligious conversation, dialogue, meaning-making. She works a lot on those issues with ISREV, which is the more European version of the REA, the International Seminar on Religious Education and Values. In addition, she works a lot on various editorial boards and advisory boards globally on this topic. She has published 5 books in Turkish, 3 edited or co-authored international books. She is a sought-after contributor to the literature of the field of religious education and interfaith dialogue. She's written 13 chapters in international books and served as the editor and the coordinator of various multi-authored international project publications. Professor Selçuk has been married for 39 years to Mustafa Selçuk, who is a retired teacher of Arabic and Quran in a religious high school in Turkey, and they have 2 adult sons also teaching in the university, so they're an education family. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you, Muala, to be with us, and we look forward to your remarks tonight.
Good evening. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's my own honor and pleasure to be here. And thank you very much for your presence, and thank you very much for the invitation and this collaboration. My presentation today, let me go back, will be not necessary in this order, but I would love to give you some hints about my background, about the teachings at Ankara University regarding this interfaith relationship and religious education. And I want to give you also, or share with you, my philosophy in terms of interreligious, interfaith dialogue. I will introduce you a concept from Quran which is called ta'aruf, and want to work on it and try to get the meaning that God wants to teach us through this concept. And last but not least, I would like to introduce some projects because I would love to say that from the very beginning, I learned ta'aruf by making ta'aruf. That means I learned the dialogue, but by making dialogue. And this is not only through my publication, but also comes through my whole life. So let me tell you some about my background and this very short story which helped me to create meaning around this interfaith dialogue and always motivate me. Like all of us, I have my own story. Mine began in a multicultural and multi-religious city, Mardin. Mardin is a city in southeastern Turkey where religions, languages, and cultures meet. In my childhood, I had friends who spoke different languages and who had different religions. I played, went, sometimes fought with them, just like any child. Sometimes we shared painted eggs or candies, or shared small toys or dolls with each other. We grew up together and in a way brought each other up. My father used to say, keep in mind that you are on common holy ground with your friends. I wondered for many years what this common holy ground could be. Could it be actual physical common ground, like the backyard of the mosque where we played together, or the churchyard where we took shelter at times? Or could it be the blending of the sounds of church bells with that of azan in the city of Mardin? My father once spoke of a new priest that came to the monastery in Mardin. He mentioned that the two of them recited the Surah of Mary together from the Quran. There is a surah called Maryam in the Quran. They recited it together. Then I thought that this common holy ground must be the Surah of Mary. At a certain point, however, I must have stopped inquiring about it, for I remember little about it. That's until I began my studies in the Faculty of Divinity at Ankara University. I learned that our Holy Quran refers to Jews and Christians as people of the book, Ahl al-Kitab. It further describes their holy books as bearing the qualities of light, divinity, and guidance. I learned that the Quran invites Christians to a common word between us. The Quran praised the people of the book, yet it also criticized them at times. Some of my professors said that such criticism were not directed to the religions themselves, but more so to the wrongful conducts of these adherents at that time. Other professors stated that these criticisms were still legitimate and that we should always exercise caution towards the adherents of other religions. Once one of my professors wrote an essay titled, "No one has a monopoly of heaven." In response to him, another professor wrote an essay titled, "Muslims have the monopoly of heaven." I think there are different opinions in different faiths on this issue. But why should people care so much about who is to be admitted to the heaven? Isn't it not up to God to decide? I started to ask the question when pursuing common ground. What is the purpose of our diversity? Why are these differences among religious people? These were not the kinds of questions I had ever asked before because diversity had simply been a natural part in my youth. So why are we different from each other? God could have created us all the same if He had wished to do so. The Holy Quran says, I would create you as a single community if I saw it. Thus, differences and diversity seem to be based on God's will. In this point, during my PhD and after I completed my PhD on the child religious development, I am indebted to Professor Beyza Bilgin. Sure. Education in Turkey. I have read and learned from many other Islamic scholars, but with respect to the foundation of my work in Encounter or in Ta'aruf, which I'm going to explain later, her and I want to communicate some of the immense richness I found in her work. She was engaged in analysis of what we may call oppressive structures of tradition based on set of do's and don'ts, with a fixed single meaning not open to reconsideration. Her writings gave a fresh breath and provided a much-needed critical perspective of inquiry into Islamic education. She was teaching the perspective teachers, interpretation that helps students create meaning and ethical guides for daily living. Progress in education, using her words, means to become more human. Its foundation lies in the fact that no human being and no tradition can properly claim to have access to the whole truth. You see some of inspiring words from her philosophy, and which I phrased them in my words. She taught us in her lectures that every human person has different quality. It's God's grace. This enables everyone to enrich the humanity with the differences. She was focusing not on mostly on similarity, but to the meaning of differences mostly. And now I can call it global religious perspective, but what we were doing with her was encountering the differences. And she was saying that religious educator had the obligation, the task to honor the tradition through speaking the wisdom of the tradition and trying to create a common sense during this wisdom. And you see some of the tasks of religious education which I want to share with you, because my spiritual depends on this dedication of my work. I ask how could it be if we imagine the different faiths that they search together to define themselves in relation to one another rather than opposition. Also, I see it as a challenge for all our faiths. But, a challenge, but could it be also an opportunity to enter into a new discourse and by new channels to work together and learn about the meaning of our differences? For these reasons, I started to work on the Quran and mostly on the passages that address diversity. Passages in the Quran which spoke of diversity as an opportunity for friendship rather than dispute impressed me a lot. I came to realize that if diversity is caused by God, then I definitely should embrace it. Verses in the Quran reveal that God simply asked people to understand each other This is the verse in Arabic. This is in the color. It's called, let me first read the verse. First, maybe in English, you say, "O mankind." It doesn't say, "O Muslims," or any other faith. Just mankind. It is an invitation for all human beings. We created you. We means this is a pattern of glorifying. God used this word "we" to glorify and or to make the believer feel that the almighty of God. You all from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into races and tribes, so that you should know each other. This is not to fight with each other, but to know each other. What is the meaning of to know here? Yeah, we know each other, people, but there must be something deep in here, I thought. And then comes this other part of the verse, which leads the scholar to a new channel. It says, "The most honor of you in the sight of God are the ones most mindful of Him." That's reasoning. Be conscious of the greatness of God and think about diversity, think about the meaning of the creation. God has full knowledge and God is well acquainted with all things. And the Arabic version, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى ثم جعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. That's again this word ta'aruf, to get to know each other. But again, for me, getting to know each other is something to come face to face, maybe work together, maybe do job together, but it should be more than that. And I will share with you the point which I reached in terms of لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. This is from the chapter Hujurat, and this shaped my whole philosophy later in my work in terms of getting each other or getting to know the other. What does it mean, the other? Religiously other, or anything that make me different from the person or from people. Again, going with the differences. We're working a bit on this verse. I just give you a short explanation and you will see the result on the board which I reach. I came to realize that if diversity is caused by God, then I definitely should embrace it. Verses in the Quran reveal that God simply asked people to understand each other. The word in the Quran is ta'aruf, lita'arafu, God says, the reason for differences. This primary goal is supported in different Quranic discourses. They state that humans are created by God from God's breath. Nefakha min ruhi, from God's breath. Whoever looks at humans finds a way to God and remembers that humans are the most dignified creatures of all. Holy Quran also refers to these differences as evidence of God's existence and power. For instance, one of the verses states that among his signs are the creation of earth and heavens, and the diversity of your languages and colors. There truly are messages in this for those who know. Now, another word came. Get to know each other, and those are signs for the people who know, who use their reason, who use their mind, who use their wisdom about the meaning. Those are all signs. The difference in language, the difference in color, the difference in culture, all are signs for us to understand, to think, to reflect, and create meaning around it. When scholars study diverse aspects of human beings, this is again from the core values of the Quran, they can find clues about the mysteries of the universe. According to the Quran, diversity among humans is to be the object of study, not of disputes and fights. All of this should change our perspective and transform us so that we are more open to understand each other. Then going with these two outcomes of ta'aruf, that the differences are a chance to come to get to know each other and to create values. Let me focus some more on this concept of ta'aruf, on the meaning of ta'aruf, and then I would ask some questions around it. The concept of ta'aruf has become the core of interreligious education when thinking about the relation to the other for many years in my work. I profited from that concept. If we analyze the concept of ta'aruf in educational perspective, you see that the other is enriching and developing one's own existence. Thus, Islam opens an important framework of understanding around this concept. The differences between human beings are willed by God. And, as I said before, they are sign of the Creator. And as being good or bad. Their function is rather to make us perceive the meaning of creation. The educational approach, you see it on the board. And now, while I'm sharing all these ideas with you, I get the feeling that in a world in which differences are stressed and human beings are lost in exploited, in meaningless struggles and clashes, teaching like this will be hard to realize. Therefore, I cannot say in my classes to my student, ta'aruf is a command from God, so keep it and be people of ta'aruf. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work. So you should go after it. You should work for it. But how? We have some questions around this. We ask whether religious education or teach our students or our children or in our community, if we have in a position to teach interfaith relationship, first we say that, what are we doing? Are we doing theology or are we doing an educational task? This is a discussion among scholars. For me, we're doing both. But the key point is how to integrate with them. Not just teaching theology and saying this is God's message and keep it, but also trying to let people understand, reflect, feel the meaning. But how? Here we need pedagogical approaches. So, encounter or ta'aruf in my philosophy has a theological perspective and pedagogical perspective. I would like to share with you one of recent meeting in REA, which the organization which I am part of, and Dr. Mercer mentioned about it. Last November, we had a meeting on this learning in encounter. And it was really a meeting provided us with lots of insight and hints. Some of them was to look at reality through the eyes of others. This was some idea I picked from the proceedings. You may find the proceedings on its website, and also I want to share for those who are interested. Thank you, Joyce, for this marvelous journal. You could find this is a pre-conference issue, and some part of my speech also is there, and other scholars from different parts of the world share their insight on this. And the problem is how to look through the eyes of others instead of moving them, process everything through only one perspective. In this meeting, we touched the issue of the danger of a single story, because we sometimes fell in the trap of making a single story the whole story. So we educators dealt with this issue in this conference. And again, try to explore the reality they experience, I mean the young or the people we teach, experience from various angles, so they have opportunity to construct their own view. Recently, in my own work and with my scholar in Ankara University, I would like to share some point of our approach. I use the word construct here. Move from the notion of receiving knowledge to construction, to constructive knowledge. What I mean by receiving knowledge is the knowledge you inherit, you get. We are all faithful people, and at the faculty we teach faithful students. They know many things. The issue is not to introduce them the point or the history or the principles of religion. Not only, we have to also help them to understand the meaning of the tradition and to think what to do with this marvelous heritage in their own life. This is a kind of integration, life with faith. So just a few words from Ankara University I would love to share with you. Those are also the points I'm going to explain, and you can get some points from the board as well about the challenge teaching Islamic religious education. The question at the heart of our attempt, I mean that me and my colleagues at Ankara University, I know that Professor Medigan visited Ankara University and is quite familiar with the movement among the scholars in terms of understanding the Quranic message and related it into daily life. And so the question at the heart of the attempt in religious education in my university, in my home university, is what would it mean if we transformed our religious education system so that prospective teachers trained at our school were empowered to know how to engage with the message of the Quran in order to find guidance to crafting meaningful lives for themselves and their future students. For many years, my colleagues and I have been engaged in a series of studies to empower our students to relate to different understanding of what it means to be a Muslim, both in the history of Islam and today's plural world. This is the core question, what it means to be a Muslim, both in history, how was it in the history, and how could it be, not should be, but could it be, just let them think over it, trying not to impose on them, but to engage them with the tradition. What could it be in today's plural world? Many of the ideas in theoretical part of our work reflect collaborative work with each other. Religious educator, Islamic history, colleagues from exegesis of the Quran. I call it an interdisciplinary approach, or communicating with the Quranic text through different disciplines. But how to understand, let me explain this. I believe that understanding goes beyond knowing. As I said, God wants you to know each other. This means, yes, the meaning of know, ta'aruf in Arabic, not only to get to know, but it's got a deeper meaning. It also implies understanding. And not only understanding, it's a ta'aruf. There is T at the first letter. It implies mutuality. When you use T, that means mutual understanding for both sides. It's kind of interaction. So I believe that understanding is a mode of knowledge, yes, but also is a mode of being. But how to take our students beyond what they already know? How to generate knowledge much deeper and richer than facts and information gained from their families, mosque, or other sources. The traditional way of studying, reading, memorizing, and working on the Quran or chapter or surah help us a lot. And we try to understand the message of the Quran and how God teaches us by not only by ta'aruf, by the integrity of the Quranic message. I would be very happy during our discussion to go more detail in our way of teaching, but in order to respect the time I have, I want just to go through some of my projects. As I said, I learned ta'aruf, I learned encounter by doing encounter. So those are some projects I want to share with you. Recently they came out. The way we collaborate, you may find it interesting, and the way we learn from each other, for me, if I didn't have such kind of collaboration from different culture, from different background, I can't, I think, reflect on my tradition as much as now I'm doing. This is a process of not only knowing the other, but knowing yourself. And I call it knowing self and others. Because the message is, in Islam it says, those who know themselves know their Lord as well. So knowing yourself, need the other people. So when you meet other, you also meet yourself again. Using Rumi words, you start scrape the mirror of your soul, and you start thinking on your own tradition from different angles. What happened during this project, or first, what are they? Let me explain to you. This, I think I have one more. This is a dictionary. It is not a usual dictionary. It has got 350 articles, and each concept has been defined in 350, not less, 350 words. In terms of two traditions, Muslim and Christianity, with German colleagues and with Turkish Muslim colleagues. 44 Muslim colleagues from Ankara University and 24 from German part from different university. I had the honor and the prestige, and we did try in 8 years to define the concepts from the philosophy of, I call it like this, but the aim was to help to get to know each other from the vision of ta'aruf. Because ta'aruf needs goodwill, it needs true and sound information as well. So we need this information to know about each other from reliable sources, from sound information. So this dictionary, it's a very first one in its own, and it's been published in German and in Turkish at the same time, and it took us 8 years to work together and learn from each other. What happened at the end of this journey I learned as Ta'aruf? Yes, we created these two dictionary, and we finished the Arabic version and the English translation as well, and we are looking for someone to publish the English. If you are interested, I would be very happy, because we haven't decided yet, so we are looking for. But much more has taken for me in this journey. As scholars, we initially and strongly at the beginning, we defended our position. I remember very well when we came together. Even scholars, it's not easy. As I said, Ta'aruf does not happen by itself. We have to work for it. This is the reason you are all here. This is the reason I am here, to share, to understand, to learn from each other, and go move further. Because there is little healing outside, so we have to contribute to enlarge this healing by our faith, by getting assistance from our faith. So we began our journey at the beginning in an official manner. But these things changed over the 7 years. We began to grow together. We began to find more common ground. We began to understand, appreciate, and value each other's values. We became colleagues and friends. In essence, we achieved what is at the heart of Ta'aruf, or dialogue, or encounter: a greater knowledge and a deeper respect, self and other, a deeper respect of self and the other. Another project I would like to share with you, it's just came out, no, let me put this one. It is this book, what we call An Islamic Worldview from Turkey: Religion in a Modern, Secular and Democratic State. The approach came from a Canadian, from a Christian colleague. He's got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 framework, and under each framework has got questions, because he thinks that if we have a notion of broader picture, and if we create the understanding of worldview of a faith, mostly for the educator, for the teachers, then they will be ready in the classroom for the question of their students. Because the teacher have difficulties to answer the questions. Life is going, and always they come with different questions to classroom. So teachers need to have a broader perspective, what we call it worldview. This project took us 5 years. Each year this Professor John Ball came from Canada to Turkey, to Ankara University. Me and my 2 colleagues and our PhD students created workshops. John asked us questions. He presents himself as a challenger, as an outsider, challenger tradition, and we responded. And please look at the title, An Islamic Worldview, not the Islamic. I don't know whether it exists, the Islamic world. It's all understanding, thinking, reflection, and trying to get the meaning of the message of God. So, coming to the end of my presentation, I would like to share with you some of my experience. I met different people, different cultures. This is the workshop from our book. This is Eden Seminary from different countries. This is what I felt during the whole of my journey. I think that only through mutual understanding can we be faithful to our vocation given by God. This is the ta'aruf. What is ta'aruf? Ta'aruf aims to create a climate to foster mutual understanding and respect. Let me summarize my talk with these words. The whole of my professional life, I can define it in three concepts: Marifa, Ta'aruf, and Tasabuq al-Khayrat. Marifa means that working to create a new voice for the plural world we live in, for the conflictual pluralism, so to speak, some scholars say, to live in. This is Marifa. And Ta'aruf, I shared it with you, the philosophy, the spirit of my work. And Tasabuq al-Khayrat is the Quranic concept. It says that competition with the good. When you have sound information or knowledge about each other and you develop self-respect, respect of yourself and the other, then you open the way to work together to create new values for humanity, which is defined by the Quran as Tasabuq al-Khayrat. So I use a quote at the end of my speech for tonight, for this evening, from Hafiz. Hafiz says that, a mystic, Muslim mystic, I quote, "I once asked a bird, how is it that you fly in this gravity of darkness? She responded, love lifts me." So I think we need each other to learn more. I believe we need each other to learn more about God's perfect love and mercy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Selchuk, for not only inspiring around this concept of mutual encounter and recognition and the task of moving towards realizing it, but also extremely rich frameworks for doing so, and we're indebted. Any of you connected with publishers, I hope you will think about an English publication of this remarkable dictionary that has been developed. I now would like to invite Dr. Salih Sayilgan to be with us to introduce the next speaker. Salih is the coordinator of the Certificate of Studies for Muslim Christian Studies at the Consortium, recent PhD at Catholic University.
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace, everyone. So now it is my honor and great pleasure to introduce you Reverend Dr. Ian Markham. Dr. Markham currently serves as Dean and President of Virginia Theological Seminary, where he also teaches courses on theology and ethics. Dr. Markham completed his PhD at the University of Exeter in the UK, where he focused on Christian ethics. He's also an ordained priest in the Episcopal Church of the United States. Before his tenure at Virginia Theological Seminary, Dr. Markham served as Dean and Professor of Theology and Ethics at Hartford Seminary in Connecticut. As you know, they have lots of focus on interfaith dialogue. And also as visiting Professor of Globalization, Ethics and Islam at Leeds Metropolitan University in the UK. Dr. Markham is a prolific writer, I think almost every month. He is the author and editor of numerous books, including Against Atheism, Why Dawkins, Hitchens, and Harris Are Fundamentally Wrong. So now we come to dialogue, right? Liturgical Life Principles, How Episcopal Worship Can Lead to Healthy and Authentic Living, Christ and Culture, Communion After Lambeth, A Theology of Engagement, Truth and Reality of God, Do Morals Matter, Understanding Christian Doctrine and Introduction to Said Nursi, Life, Thought and Writings, and most recently, Reasonable Radical, Reading and Writings of Martin Percy. So, I mean, I have the pleasure of knowing Dr. Markham for almost a decade now. By the way, you still look the same, Ian. The secret is theory. So I share his vision of Christian-Muslim understanding. While engaging with other traditions, I think one of the things that I admire about the work of Dr. Markham is that he is still rooted in his tradition, so that he emphasizes rootedness. First being able to relate to your community and then to engage with other communities. So I relate to his work in terms of being rooted in your tradition. And I also, proud to say that I am one of his students, and I think when it comes to dialogue and teaching, he's a great listener, whether this be to listen to an atheist or a Muslim. I witnessed this. But he is not hesitant to, while he's not hesitant to engage, but he wouldn't compromise his own tradition. And I also, frankly, I witnessed him even in conservative Muslim circles, and I saw that he's even in the conservative Muslim circles, he is vocal about faith, his faith in Jesus. As you know, this might be quite intimidating, to be vocal about your faith in Jesus Christ. So I think this is, in this sense, he's a great example. The other thing I admire about Dr. Markham's theology, that he takes it seriously how theology should translate into public, really how theology can be part of our national conversation when it comes to race, when it comes to gender, when it comes to Islamophobia. And also gun violence. And I recently learned that he will take Delta Airlines more often. So this is another thing. So the idea is that how really we should translate our theology into issues. Without further ado, Dr. Ian Markham.
Thank you very much. Salam alaikum. It's lovely to be with you. Thank you to the Foundation. Thank you to the Consortium. I'm delighted to be across the Potomac on the other side of that great river. And thank you for that lecture we've just heard. And let me just start with that lecture with my reflections on the theme tonight of religious education in diverse society. What I appreciated about that lecture was we had a rooted Islamic justification for engaging with the other in a society which is diverse. And I appreciated the way in which you developed the concept of taruf, to know each other. You grounded it in the text of the Quran, the creatorial injunction for us to recognize that we come from a similar source, and God creates with the purpose of inviting us to get to know each other. And the depth of the concept was rich. Mutual understanding, interaction, knowledge of self involves knowledge of others. It was rich and imaginative, and the great advantage the Quran has over the Christian scriptures is that there is an explicit justification of diversity. I've often had conversations with my Christian theological friends. Is there a comparable verse to that marvelous verse in the Quran which says, and of course I can't translate it, but you alluded to it, you know, God could have easily created a single community but chose not to. God always wanted religious diversity. That is such a compelling concept. That is a great gift that the Holy Quran gives us. And so I found your presentation rich and very, very helpful, because what it provides is a distinctive Islamic justification grounded in the Holy Quran, in the authoritative text of the religion, that justifies a constructive relationship with diversity. So let's contrast that image for a moment with the popular justification that you find for religious diversity in secular society. I want to suggest that the key word you find there is toleration. Now, all words have a history, and that word has a very particular and distinctive history. It is an Enlightenment concept. And in the end, a key articulation of that concept is, of course, the work of John Locke. Now, you'll recollect that his Letter of Toleration, written in 1689, was written at a time when the issues of religious diversity were just confined to Christians. And we were in a situation where the key political question facing England at the time was, could we tolerate other Christians? Could we tolerate Roman Catholics? Could we tolerate dissenters, those which were reformed? And in that text, he provides a justification not for tolerating Roman Catholics, because the problem, said John Locke, about Roman Catholics, a foreign power, so that made them very tricky. But you could tolerate, he argued, dissenters, those who wanted to practice simpler forms of worship and liturgy. And he justified it by making two key distinctions. The first was between the public and the private. He basically said religion can be tolerated when it's a private practice. And the nice thing about dissenters is they just wanted to worship and say prayers slightly differently from the right way. That was the sort of thesis that he was propagating. And therefore, given it was a private practice in the individual's home, you could allow that. And then the second distinction he makes is, of course, the distinction between the individual and society. The two ideas are linked. For John Locke, in the end, religion is about how individuals practice themselves in society, a key concept of the modern liberal state, not democrat, but used philosophically and conceptually. The key concept there is that, in the end, we're just individuals opting with certain benefits that come with that, and that's up to each individual to opt in. And providing you don't mess with the cohesion of society, you're allowed to opt in. That was basically his argument. He excludes two groups, which in principle he thinks society can't tolerate: the Roman Catholics, because of their acknowledgement of a foreign prince, as he puts it, the Pope, and the other group were atheists, because he explained you can't trust them, because they have no foundation for their ethics. Now, the interesting thing about John Locke is you end up with a concept of toleration. And the thing about toleration when it comes to interreligious relationships is actually it's a very negative concept. You tolerate things you disapprove of. I'm pleased to report I'm happily married, so I don't tolerate my wife. I enjoy her company, and we have a great time together, right? But you do tolerate things you really find problematic. That's how you use the word. The word has the connotation of disapproval, coupled with some sort of power to stop it. And under those situations, you then tolerate. So, for example, if you're a person who rents out condominiums, you might be a person who exercises toleration if a gay couple, which you think is inappropriate, comes to you and says, can I please rent a condo from you? That would be an act of toleration. There'll be disapproval out of your ethics, perhaps, coupled with the power not to do it. Then you tolerate. Those are the two conditions for the great Enlightenment concept of toleration. And I want to suggest that one weakness with that is it's actually very negative. What it means is all you're actually doing is allowing that you disapprove of. So think for a moment about what a striking contrast you have with Ta'aruf on the one hand, and concept of toleration on the other. With the Enlightenment concept of toleration, you basically have individuals atomized, at a distance, keeping there and allowing the other, providing it doesn't break or destroy the internal cohesion of society, in an act of disapproval which permits. But Ta'aruf, on the other hand, is an injunction from God to enter into a relationship as an obligation of creation, as an act of obedience, if you like, to get to know each other and engage in the privilege of that exchange, with the resulting mutual appreciation that that will bring. So as a Christian priest, which of the two accounts do I think is closer to Christianity? I want to suggest tonight that we can form a common alliance with our Muslim brothers and sisters in arguing for a richer and deeper concept of religious engagement. A concept of religious engagement, now the Christian tradition wouldn't talk about Ta'aruf as such. The key concept in our tradition is perhaps agape or philia, Greek words for love. And the associating theological insights are grounded in concepts such as forgiveness and justice, which are the basis on which we're invited by God to live together. But where Ta'aruf and the Christian concepts of mutual engagement coincide is in the hard work of believing it to be an obligation on us as faithful believers to engage constructively with the other. When a person decides they're not going to make the effort to get to know a person in another faith tradition, that contradicts both the concept of Ta'aruf and it contradicts the very essence of Christ's teaching around love and engagement with the other. So I'm very grateful tonight for your presentation, and I want to suggest that the rich insight we learn is that both Muslims and Christians have some hard work to do in our society to witness to an alternative foundation for religious education in a diverse and pluralist world. Thank you very much for listening.